Hello friends, in this video I will modify 5.1 speaker into active subwoofer and I will tell you why. Let's begin. First of all, I will show you the subwoofer and the speaker. As you can see, it's a special speaker because has two coils. As you can see, there are two pairs of wires. Usual speaker has only one pair of wires. Let's see the characteristics. It's 4 ohm and 100 watts. Now I will show you the inside parts. This is the main part from subwoofer. This is the input connector and the outputs for the speakers. This is the power amplifier, and this is the transformer. This one is the control pod. As you can see, all the functions are here: power, mute, volume, and gain for every channel. Now I have to tell you why I modified this. First of all, as you can see, this IC is taken out from the PCB because it's bad. I replaced 2 times and 2 times it's burn. I verified all the voltages on every pin and I didn't found any problem. But this is still burning, and that's why I decided to don't use this anymore. And this IC are identical. It's audio amp with 4 outputs. These 4 outputs are for speakers, and these 4 outputs are put two pairs in a bridge for the subwoofer speaker. They use this solution to obtain more power from this voltage, 20 volts, and this small transformer. And other reason that I have to modify this, it's you can see this strange connector with 9 pins. I don't know the name of this connector. It's one here and one here. Problem with this connector is that now it's very sensitive and interrupts the outputs, and you cannot use this because it's a lot of noise and interruption in the music, and the contacts are not very good anymore, and you can't find exactly the type of connector and the cable to replace. And that's why I decided to modify this, and from 5.1 I will not use this control pod. I will use only this PCB and this. First I will tell you what I will do. In this connector with 9 pins, there is a pin that gives this board, that put this board on power and on standby. I will identify this pin and I will put a switch to turn this on and off. If I connect this to the mains and I will power from this switch, this will be on standby without this signal here. Without this power on signal, will be on standby. And first of all, I have to put a switch here that will turn on and off this PCB. And I will have to replace this gray connector, its output for center, this bad IC. And instead of output, I will modify this connector and will be input for subwoofer. Now input for subwoofer is on this connector from this control pod. And I will put a volume potentiometer on this subwoofer input. Now let's begin. I need this cable to connect the subwoofer with the control pod. Now let's connect this to the power. Now it's power off. Let's power on. It's power on, power off. Now let's identify the power on pin. I will measure with the power off, because this control pod takes supply voltage from this one. And first of all, I will identify supply voltage. So we have 12 volts. So this pin is 12 volts and all the other pins are to the ground. Now let's power on and let's measure this pin. It's not this one. I presume that it's this pin because it's near supply, but it's not this one. I think this one. As you can see, it's 5 volts. So I believe this 5 volts is the power on signal. Let's check. I power this off. And now we have no voltage here. So first task is to give here 5 volts for power on and put a switch for power on. So I connected this speaker on subwoofer output. Now let's power this on. It's completely mute. Now let's power on. And now you can hear the annoying noise. From this connector. I told you. Now let's identify input signal for subwoofer. So this wire is 12 volts and here we need 5 volts, but it's not digital input, it's only a transistor base, so we can use a simple resistor. Now let's see what value we need. So this resistor, it's for 5 volts drop of voltage and it's 1 kilo. That means that I can put also 1 kilo resistor here for drop of voltage from 20 volts to 5 volts. I've connected this small resistor. It's 2 kilo from 12 volts to power on pin. Let's see if it works. Now let's turn this power on. It seems it's not working. Let's see why. So we have 6 volts here. Let's connect the cable. And now it's working. Let's test. Now it's working. But just until the mute function will turn on. Now let's find the mute pin. After 1 hour I solved the mystery. You noticed that even I put 5 volts standby voltage, power on 5 volts, power on voltage, this PCB doesn't want to start. And this start only when I put the cable in this connector and cable in the other connector. But I measured the voltage with or without the connector and I didn't notice any difference of voltage. And then I pull out every small connectors. I pulled out one by one all these 4 connectors to see when this stops working. And I noticed that when I pull off this connector, this PCB stopped working. And then I put this connector on and this cable inside, then this PCB starts. And then I check central pin ground, and I noticed that when connection cable is not put inside, then we don't have a ground, and when we put the cable inside, that central pin is connected to ground. It's some kind of ground return. This is the main ground. Goes by cable and returns by cable back. And I made this a connection from primary ground and return ground. And now let's see it's working. I can hear the noise, and when I touch the input, now it's working. Now I have to connect the input of subwoofer with this pin with RCA connector. So I've made the final cut. Here I connected these two wires. This is subwoofer signal input. And on this PCB I disconnected the power supply for satellite amplifier. And now it's connected only subwoofer amplifier because they are identical, and I want to keep this for backup in case that this one will be broken. Now I will put everything back for the final test. Now let's make some tests. Let's power this up. And I can hear the noise. Now let's make some music test. Let's power this back. Now it's working good. I just have to add volume potentiometer to the input. If you have any questions, please put it in a comment. Thanks for watching, see you in my next video. Bye.